Welcome back to CIA Declassified. We are descending into the late 1950s and the turbulent 1960s, the peak of the behavioral science revolution. The Cold War had moved beyond the physical borders of Berlin and into the chemical synapses of the human brain. We are looking at an era where the fear of the Manchurian Candidate was a national obsession, and the CIA's Office of Scientific Intelligence was given a blank check to explore the limits of human endurance. The agency was no longer satisfied with just knowing what the enemy was doing. They wanted to control how the enemy felt. In a world terrified by the prospect of brainwashing, the agency sought the ultimate silent weapon, a way to drain the will to resist from an entire population. They envisioned a city where no one protested, not because they were afraid, but because they simply didn't care anymore. This was the dark pursuit of biological hopelessness. This was MKGLOOM. How did this project get its name? The designation MKGLOOM was a cryptonym under the technical services staff. The MK prefix indicated the project was part of the broader umbrella research into mind control and behavioral modification. The suffix gloom was a chillingly literal internal descriptor for the project's primary objective: the artificial induction of reactive depression and clinical apathy. Unlike other sub-projects that focused on erratic behavior, Gloom was specifically aimed at the downward modulation of the human spirit. MKGLOOM was the agency's attempt to turn despair into a tactical asset. MKGLOOM was a research project focused on identifying chemical inhibitors that could cross the blood-brain barrier to suppress dopamine and serotonin production. A quote from a declassified 1961 TSS internal memorandum: "The ideal substance would not incapacitate the subject physically, but would render them psychologically incapable of initiating purposeful or rebellious action." End quote. Records show that MKGLOOM studied the effects of reserpine, a drug used for blood pressure that was discovered to cause severe suicidal depression as a side effect. It's spelled Reserpine. I think it's reserpine. Documentation confirms that the agency researched sensory deprivation tanks to determine how long it took for a healthy mind to descend into induced apathy without external stimuli. The project experimented with high-frequency sound flooding, testing if constant, barely audible, dissonant tones could trigger chronic fatigue and irritability in urban environments. A quote from Dr. Sidney Gottlieb, chief of TSS: "We are looking for the off switch for human motivation." End quote. MKGLOOM involved the study of learned helplessness, observing how subjects reacted when every effort to improve their situation was met with an unpredictable negative response. Logs indicate the agency researched nutritional deficiency mapping, identifying which B vitamin depletions most quickly led to lethargy and mental fog in a target population. The project tested aerosolized sedatives that could be introduced into building ventilation systems to calm agitated crowds by inducing immediate drowsiness. Technical files reveal that MKGLOOM researchers collaborated with veterinary scientists to study how herd animals were chemically subdued, attempting to translate those methods to human crowd control. The agency funded studies at major universities to observe the effects of social isolation on the metabolic rates of volunteer subjects. Records confirm that MKGLOOM scientists investigated the use of endocrine disruptors to lower testosterone levels in male populations to reduce aggressive resistance. The project tracked the long-term psychological effects of chronic noise pollution on factory workers in industrialized Soviet cities. A quote from a Declassified 1963 project review: "Apathy is more infectious than smallpox and far more difficult to treat once it takes hold of a community." End quote. Internal memos reveal that the agency considered adding apathetic agents to the local beer supply of specific target ports to reduce worker strikes. Documents show that MKGLOOM researchers monitored the suicide clustering phenomenon in closed societies to find the tipping point of collective despair. The CIA experimented with monochromatic lighting in interrogation rooms to see if it accelerated the onset of mental fatigue. Records show a collaboration with the U.S. Army Chemical Corps to refine the delivery of apathy-inducing substances via cluster bombs. Documentation confirms that the agency explored infrasound frequencies below the range of human hearing to cause feelings of dread and sorrow. The project maintained a library of despair, a collection of music and literature found to be most effective at lowering morale. A quote from a psychological warfare specialist whose name has been redacted: "If you can't make them love you and you can't make them fear you, you make them too tired to care who you are." End quote. Logs indicate that MKGLOOM studied the apathy index of prisoners of war who were subjected to irregular sleep schedules. The agency researched the use of heavy metals in trace amounts to induce a state of permanent neurological clouding. Records prove that MKGLOOM scientists tracked the morale decay of cities under prolonged blackouts. Internal reports describe the development of odor generators that emitted the smell of rot to subconsciously depress inhabitants of a target area. The project tested barbiturate cocktails designed to keep a subject in a state of functional stupor. Documentation shows the agency studied hunger-induced apathy to see if tactical crop failures could be used as a behavioral management tool. Records reveal the creation of counter-inspiration leaflets designed to make resistance figures look incompetent and hopeless. The CIA utilized pseudoscientific journals to spread fake news about the inevitability of social decline to target intellectuals. Memos confirm that MKGLOOM researchers monitored church attendance drops as a metric for the success of induced apathy campaigns. Technical files confirm the agency designed comfort inhibitors for public furniture to prevent people from lingering and forming social bonds. Documentation confirms that the agency explored color spectrum manipulation, investigating whether painting walls in specific shades of gray or muddy brown could increase feelings of defeatism in detainment centers. Records indicate that MKGLOOM researched thallium-induced lethargy, examining how low-level poisoning could mimic the symptoms of chronic depression. The agency investigated repetitive task psychology, observing if forced, meaningless labor could permanently alter a subject's drive for autonomy. Logs show that the researchers analyzed the submission reflex in canines to find biological markers that could be stimulated in humans via hormonal injections. Technical files confirm the agency tested electromagnetic pulse dissonance to see if disrupting natural brain frequencies could induce a mental fog state. Records show a study into social comparison dampening, aiming to find ways to make individuals stop comparing their poor living standards to those of more prosperous nations. Internal memos reveal a project to create synthetic melatonin overdose protocols to keep populations in a state of hibernation apathy during winter months. The agency studied acoustic shadow zones in urban planning to identify where a sense of isolation could be heightened by the absence of natural city sounds. The most disturbing gaps in the MKGLOOM Declassified record appear in the folder titled Volume 4 Community Level Observations. This section contains the highest concentration of redactions in the entire TSS archive, with over 200 consecutive pages blacked out by the agency's censors. In the hollow spaces of those redactions, a terrifying story is whispered by those who have seen the unedited folders. Some speculate that these pages contain the results of water table doping in a small, isolated Midwestern town. They say the agency introduced a depressant compound into the municipal water supply and monitored the local hospital records for a spike in unexplained lethargy and suicide attempts. They believe the black ink hides the name of a town that was sacrificed to science. Its people turned into ghosts while they were still walking the streets. Another theory focuses on the visual flicker experiments. Some speculate that the agency tested subliminal light patterns transmitted through early television broadcasts. The conspiracy posits that the redactions hide the data on visual entrainment using specific refresh rates to lower the brain's beta wave activity, essentially putting an entire viewing audience into a suggestible, apathetic trance. They believe we are still watching the same signals today, and the redactions are there to protect the broadcast industry. There is a chilling rumor regarding the developmental impact files. Speculation exists that the redactions hide experiments performed on state wards, orphans who were raised in zero-affection environments to see if a human could be pre-programmed for a life of compliance through early childhood apathy induction. They say these children grew up to be the perfect subjects, people who would never say no because they never learned how to want. The latest theory regarding the redactions involves cloud-seeding despair. This conspiracy suggests that the agency tested aerosolized mood-altering chemicals released from high-altitude planes over entire metropolitan areas. Theorists speculate that the redactions hide the chemical composition of the gray mist, a substance designed to make every rainy day feel like the end of the world. A final high-level conspiracy surfacing from the redactions concerns Project Silence. Some believe that the agency discovered a specific frequency of neural static that, when broadcast, prevents the brain from forming memories of resistance. They speculate the redactions protect the fact that this frequency is currently embedded in the national power grid's low-frequency hum, keeping the modern populace in a state of managed calm and preventing the spark of true revolution. Was MKGLOOM a success? Tactically, it was a grim discovery. It successfully identified the chemical and environmental levers that can break the human spirit. Strategically, it was a dark milestone. The project was a success in that it proved psychological neutralization was often more effective than physical force. The success of MKGLOOM is found in the modern understanding of crowd psychology and the biological basis of motivation. It successfully demonstrated that the chemical environment is a primary factor in social stability. The agency successfully mapped the geography of despair within the brain, a move that birthed the modern era of neurowarfare. It was a categorical success in proving that a population can be managed by modulating their neurochemistry. By utilizing MKGLOOM, the CIA successfully proved that the will to power is a fragile biological construct. However, the project's success was tainted by the realization that induced apathy often leads to systemic collapse. If you make a population too depressed to revolt, they eventually become too depressed to work or sustain a society. It successfully proved that despair is a double-edged sword. The research provided the blueprint for non-lethal incapacitation that is still used in clandestine operations today. Ultimately, it was a success because it gave the agency the keys to the prison of the mind. It successfully established that a person's personality and drive could be reduced to a series of chemical reactions. The project's success is seen in every modern riot control tactic that prioritizes dispersal over confrontation. It successfully proved that you don't need a dictator's whip if you can provide a citizen's chemical shackles. The mission was a total success in transforming human motivation from a philosophical concept into a manageable chemical variable. It successfully proved that the ultimate battlefield is not the city street, but the chemical balance of the brain. As far as technological and operational breakthroughs go, the Twilight protocol resulted in breakthroughs that define modern pharmacology and control, such as selective serotonin reuptake inhibition, SSRIs. While the agency was looking for ways to cause depression, their research into the serotonin pathway contributed to the development of modern antidepressant medications. Targeted aerosol delivery systems, the methods developed to disperse behavioral chemicals in air vents, led to the modern delivery system for emergency medical gas and high-precision scent marketing. Circadian rhythm disruption tech. The agency's work on sleep cycle manipulation to induce apathy is now the basis for modern light therapy for seasonal affective disorder and jet lag management. And non-lethal acoustic deterrence. The high-frequency sound research from MKGLOOM provided the foundational physics of modern long-range acoustic device systems used by navies and police forces for crowd management. MKGLOOM reminds us that the mind is a delicate balance of chemicals and hope. The Twilight Protocol proved that the agency could, if it chose, tip that balance into the dark. The labs are closed and the bottles are empty, but the knowledge of how to demotivate a human being remains in the agency's arsenal. We are still living with the leftovers of these experiments in the way we understand mental health and the way states manage large-scale dissent. The quiet of a complacent city may not be a sign of peace. It might just be the result of a very old protocol. Despair is a quiet weapon, but its silence is the loudest proof of its power. The shadows we found in those labs have elongated to touch the corners of our own daily lives. We must remain vigilant of the light within us, for there are those who have spent decades learning how to turn it off. The true resistance begins with the choice to feel, to hope, and to care in a world designed to make us indifferent. Our emotions are not just feelings, they are the last remaining territory of freedom. Thanks for listening. Stay safe, and remember, if the world starts to feel gray, ask yourself why. Join us next time as we examine A.E. Pole. In the cold grip of the Soviet bloc, the agency found a way to fan the flames of freedom. We'll uncover the facts behind A.E. Pole, the covert intelligence gathering and support for anti-Soviet dissidents in Poland. It was a game of Sam is that? Secret handshakes, and the long, slow march toward a revolution. Join us next time for the Solidarity Signal. In the meantime, I'll see you in the archives.